News understands that 350 people, that's illegal migrants actually, crossed the channel over the weekend. That takes the total number to over 1,000 so far this month.
That's right. This comes as the House of Lords will debate the government's Safety of Rwanda bill again this afternoon.
Now, yesterday on GB News, the Trade Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, was on GB News with Camilla Tominey, and she said she would not rule out leaving the European Court of Human Rights. And remember, she is a future potential Tory leader. So take a listen.
People are exploiting our country. They think that they can do what they like, and a lefty lawyer from somewhere is going to help them out and help them to stay here. And they usually use the Human Rights Act, which is based on the European Court of Human Rights. And what I say to people is that this is something that we have not ruled out. It's not the first thing that we want to do. We have other plans first, because there are many good things that are in the Human Rights Act. And there are many rights which we have, which we don't want to just make go away. We have to think about a plan to keep what's good and remove what's bad. So we have to think about it very carefully. But I wouldn't rule it out.
Joining us now is immigration lawyer Ivon Sampson. Ivon Sampson, she was quite clear there, the Trade Secretary. She was talking about lefty lawyers will step in. She means you.
It's sad that it's the same language. I was hoping that the potential leaders that will take over this poison chalice that we have, it would have a plan of some sort and not play the same old blame game. Blame me, blame other lawyers, blame the asylum seekers, blame the courts, blame the judges. But the only people that can take the blame is the government, because they've got their hand on the rudder. They decide policies, and the policies that they've put forward over the last, 2 or 3 years haven't worked. And not a single policy has brought one asylum seeker to remove. Look, in firm numbers, last year we had 29,000 small boat crossings. Out of that, only 1,200 people were actually removed. And that's irrespective of whether they were granted asylum or not. And the asylum grant rates are well over 50%. So of those 29,000, 50% of those people are still, most of them, almost entirely all of them, are still in the UK, not being removed, not being detained, and we're having to look after them. So there's a problem.
Yeah, there is a problem, Ivon. The problem for me is looking at the images, if you're listening on the radio, the images we were seeing to illustrate this story are hundreds of young men getting off the small boats. Hundreds of young men who, in my view, Ivon, many of them are economic refugees, economic migrants who are coming here because they think we're a soft touch and we're the land of milk and honey.
We are a soft touch. Look, 50% of them are not genuine. We know that. Now, are the government removing them? No. In fact, worse than that, most of them don't even have any identity documents. That means I could say I am Mr. Whatever from whatever country, and there's no way I can disprove that, because the government don't even have effective methods of screening people's identity. So the Home Office, I'm sorry to say this, is in a total, utter shambles. They don't have any policy to deal with this problem.
There must be a way, though, surely, Ivon, of getting round that. So, for instance, if you arrive with no papers at all, then, sorry, but you cannot have leave to remain. You just can't. That is straight away. Now you could say, well, some of them have fled a war zone and, you know, they've come thousands of miles and maybe their passport fell out their back pocket. I don't know, as they were crossing Afghanistan, perhaps. But maybe in those situations, there must be ways of testing somebody's genuine knowledge of whether they are from the country that they say that they are from. It can't be that difficult, can it?
Well, it can if you live on the borders, and many of them do live on the borders, so they would have the knowledge they need about that part of the world, about the politics, the people, the language, the food they ask. There's several questions and also their accents are very similar. So I'm afraid there are people who do slip through the system. Look, the problem is that we need to have an effective policy. There is only one policy, and that is to do deals with other countries. And if we don't have those bilateral agreements, as we did with Albania, which has worked because the numbers have come down by 50%, and the reason being, because most of them were Albanians. That's why the numbers have come down from 2022, from the 45, 50,000 down to the 25, 29,000 last year.
So what are the barriers to those deals, in your opinion?
Well, the biggest barrier is Syria. It's in war. So many people are coming from Syria, for example. We're not on good terms with Syria. So the other solution is that everyone takes their fair share. And I agree with you, Bev. If you don't have identity documents, you should not be allowed to step on our shores. It's as simple as that, because we don't know who you are. You could be a terrorist, you could belong to Hamas or another terrorist organization. So I agree with you on that point. I'm a lawyer defending human rights. What I do also defend is our rights for our children and our people, not our people here who don't know who they are.
On that point, and finally, what Kemi Badenoch said, you talk about our rights, our people. Why do we need European courts to tell us what to do? Why can't we rely on our own system? What's so special about them?
But it'll mirror the Human Rights Act, because if you look at the fundamental
why do we need
rights...
But why do we need them to police it for us? Why can't we do it ourselves? Why don't you trust British Parliament?
Well, this is the problem because of the new Iran Safe bill. They're effectively telling the courts what the way to look at the evidence.
That's because the courts have got too much power.
It's a clear example of abuse of power when you give it in the wrong hands. And I'm afraid the current lot don't deserve to have that power.
Yeah, but Ivon, it's because the Human Rights Act gave too much power to the courts. The courts now decide laws in this country. Who gave them the power to decide the laws? They weren't elected. They're not accountable.
But look, Andrew, if we hadn't had that, the Rule 39 measures, we would be sending people to a country who is run by a dictatorial killer. He is a dictator, a well-recognised human rights abuser, and we're jumping into bed with him, please.
The United Nations sends people there. The United Nations sends people there, Ivon. 1,200, 1,400 this year.
Andrew, that old chestnut, read the Human Rights
Well,
Watch
it's
report,
true.
which is only out yesterday, OK? And I defy you, go into Kigali with a sign saying, Paul Kagame out, and we'll see what happens to you. So please, let's be realistic.
If you did that in Britain with Rishi Sunak out, they'd all say yes.
But it's not a safe country, Andrew, I promise you, no matter what people say. It's not. Look at the evidence.
OK, all right, always good to see you. Ivon Sampson there, immigration lawyer. How did you think Kemi Badenoch did in that interview with Camilla commenting on GB News yesterday morning? Yes, she was.
It was a good interview. Camilla was very robust, and she is very robust. She speaks the language I think people understand.
She doesn't have a sense of humour, though, does she?
She doesn't. I've got to say that. And I've met her a few times. I met her last week. And she ain't great at small talk either. But
no. Maybe you don't need that.
No, exactly.
You're not meant to be a stand-up comedian. Didn't do Boris Johnson any harm, though, did it? That was one of the reasons why he won over the public, was his stint hosting that BBC Two show, Have I Got News For You, wasn't it? That was why he became popular. So whether Kemi... But maybe we're just sick of that now. We just want sensible, serious, and perhaps Kemi Badenoch is that person.
And if you want boring, you'll get Keir Starmer.